people still love to play softball and, volleyball and things like that. But I think our people still play it with that same kind of spirit that our people did a long time ago with the traditional games. And so I think that's why it's really important to talk about these games and not only how things are played, but why it's important to community. So I want to thank our speaker for being here tonight, Jim Cosby. He did an incredible thing. He brought back an ancient game, the ancient game of Chuckey.
Thank you. What do?
All right. Thank you for being here, Jim.
What do? Okay, as Donnie said, my name's Jim Cosby. I'm a Cherokee citizen. I'm from Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and I'm here to give a presentation on this ancient Cherokee sport of Chuckey. And there's not a lot known about Chuckey, but each day we try to learn more where we can actually bring this game back and play it as close as possible to the way that our ancestors played it hundreds of years ago. And you can see the picture here. We're going to go over everything, but these guys here are playing Chuckey, and this is out of an old drawing, probably from the 1600s or so. And you can see two men. One of them's rolling a Chuckey stone, which is one of these stones like this. We'll go over all this more in depth later. And then you have this guy throwing a spear, and what he's going to do is, once this guy rolls this Chuckey stone, he's going to try to predict where that Chuckey stone's going to stop and fall over. So once the stone is rolled, this guy will rear back and throw his spear, and hopefully it'll come close enough to he'll win. There's usually two people that play at a time, but that's basically kind of the overview of how it's played, and we'll get more in depth with it. I want to go over the history of Chuckey and kind of where it all originated and how we got to where we are today with it, and we're playing it again. And if we could advance to the next picture there. This is how you say Chuckey in Jalagi. It's Janiki, but we pronounce it Junagi, Chunky, which is Cherokee, but Lawrence Panther helped us figure that out, the right syllabary to use for our game, and we use it quite a bit. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of recorded documentation about Chuckey, so it's just kind of bits and pieces out there, and we try to collect it and bring it together to kind of get a good understanding of everything about the game. So if you'll advance the next picture. This is some more people playing Chuckey, and Chuckey originated in the Cahokia region, and that's up by St. Louis, Missouri. And they say it kind of started in the late woodland period and really got popular in the Mississippian period, so that's probably 800 to 1,000 years ago that it really took off, and started in the Cahokia region. It was one of the most important things. It was a gambling game, and it was very athletic, and people would play it and gamble. It was a gambling game, and they would gamble and end up losing everything they had, and they would become so upset a lot of them would just commit suicide. It was that bad. So very wage-driven game of sport, very athletic. Chuckey actually translates to running hard labor. That's what the word Chuckey is supposed to translate to. And these days we don't do a lot of running when we play, but that's how it originally started. It did start up around St. Louis, Missouri at Cahokia, and then it spread to the south and southeast where the Cherokee live. And we know this because there's pottery, jewelry, all kinds of things with these motifs of Chuckey players in it. So we know that it's very unique and only applies to Chuckey. Go ahead, thanks. And this is a Chuckey effigy pipe, and this was found near Okmulgee, Oklahoma years ago. And it's supposed to have come from the Cahokia region and had traveled down to Okmulgee where it was unearthed there many years ago. But you can see this effigy, In one hand, he has the chunky stone. And in this other hand, he has broken chunky sticks. And that's supposed to represent, the broken chunky sticks is supposed to represent the ending of a game. It's over. They're broken. And you see this over and over again. On everything that we have, it's that same thing, just like our shirts that we wear today. It has quite a few of those same things. And you can see here that we found this picture, and my good friend Matt Gertie, he's quite a stone man, and he made us this effigy pipe from marble. And it's just like that one I'm showing you from 1,000 years ago, almost identical to it. So it's kind of had some good results on, you know, coming back, helping some of our artists make things like that. This game was so important that when these Cahokians would go out on political gatherings and alliances and meeting their neighbors and things, the men that led these big groups of people, they would carry a chunky stone in one hand and a war club in the other hand. And that was supposed to mean either war or peace in playing the game, or political alliance. That's what they determined that meant. But it was really a big thing, and there was a lot of that stuff going on. And like I said, we know the Cherokees, it made it down to Georgia and those places. There's lots of evidence of it. Like I said, there's gorgets found in the old Cherokee countrysides. There's pottery. These effigies are found all over, so we know it was played. Unfortunately, none of the chunky spears survived. They're wood, so there's one that they found at Cahokia that was like a copper sheath that they think may have been a chunky spear, but they're really not certain because there's just really not much information. When the Europeans came to North America in the 1600s, it was kind of in the end of chunky playing. So they got to observe little bits and pieces of it, but the Cherokees, I think, had kind of stopped playing at that point in time. But there were other Creeks and all the people around us, they were still playing it, but it was replaced by stickball. That's what replaced chunky. It stopped. They liked stickball is a lot less warlike. People weren't losing everything they have, so the readings I've come across said that stickball replaced chunky, and that would probably be in the 1600s or so. The way these old timers played it is they would run after the stone, and usually it was two players with spears, and one of the players would roll the chunky stone, and they would chase it and try to come as close as the stone without hitting it. If you hit the stone, you were out, you didn't get a point. And they would play that from morning till night. They had these gigantic fields, and they would play it just, you can't imagine how big these fields were. And usually it was packed clay, hard clay surface, or hard packed fine sand. And what they would do is they would take their chunky spears and they would coat them in bear grease. And once they grease them up and throw their chunky spears, they would throw these spears and let them kind of skip along the ground and see who comes closest to the stone when it came to rest. We pretty well know that's for sure. But right now we don't have any clay packed fields or anything, or any hard packed fine sand, so we played on grassy fields today, but that's recorded, and I'm gonna pass around these spears, let everybody take a look at them. This is hickory. The original ones were 8 foot long. This one's about 6. 8 foot long, hickory, stripped down, and a thing that was unique to the Cherokees, and they're the only ones that it was recorded, but they had marks along these spears for point keeping, to see who's closest. It made it easier to keep scores and keep track of who came closest to the chunky stone. So we know that was unique to the Cherokees. So I'm gonna pass some of these around, let everybody take a look at them. And this was one of the first chunky spears that I made when we started playing it again. It's made from poplar, but it's super, super lightweight. You can throw it a long ways. It's not heavy at all. And Kevin, if you'll pass that around, we'll take a look at it. there. Another picture of them playing chunky. You can see two guys are running. There's their chunky stone out front, and when they feel like it, they're going to throw, but the spear has to be cast before the stone stops rolling, or you don't get a point. So we know that's a common rule. Okay, Kevin. Here's some pictures of some chunky, and where we play it, we call it a chunky yard. That's what it's called, chunky yard. And these are some pictures of some chunky yards from probably the 1600s, and we really don't know what information they contain, but you can see they were hard, smooth baked clay. They had logs to kind of separate the lanes, but that's one of the ancient ones, the way they used to play, and that was their chunky yard. Okay. Same thing here, we really don't know what all this stands for. Kind of what I've gathered is this may be kind of a combination chunky stickball court they used, and these things were gigantic. It was like hundreds of acres. They were gigantic. But anyway, from what I've read, this was another, they'd had big dirt berms all around the chunky yard. And then I think that this was probably recorded at the time stickball had come in, so it was kind of a little different. But I've read deals where on some of the chunky yards, they'd have a stick at each end, but they really don't denote what they were for or anything else. We kind of know what the rules of the game. So, okay. This is a shell gorget depicting a chunky player, and this is repeated over and over and over again. And it's very specific to chunky. You can see this guy's wearing a pillbox hat. It's only associated with chunky players. Everything that's found that they're wearing these little pillbox hats, it's a chunky player. You can also see he's wearing a bellow-shaped apron. All these chunky players in these gorgets and depictions have this bellows-shaped apron. And that's supposed to represent a scalp lock, like losing your head. And it's only found in these chunky players. You can also see he's got a chunky stone in his right hand. And also he has broken chunky sticks in this hand. Game over. And we see this repeated and repeated. And I've seen some, they say that they would kill a lot of people that when they would lose and stuff. And I've seen a shell gorget with this same figure, and in his left hand he has an axe, and in his right hand he has a human head. And it's bellows apron, same picture, but it has them holding heads. So that may happen. That was probably during the Mississippian period, which was 700-800 years ago. It was super popular at that point. Okay. Same thing. This haircut, found only in chunky pictures. You can also see he's got the bellow apron on. He's got the chunky stone in his right hand. He's got the broken chunky sticks in his left hand. And you see that over and over again. Every time you see that, you won't see it on any other things. It's always chunky only. And I've just seen a lot of this stuff, and even the experts say that that's what it is. It's only found dealing with these chunky players. Okay, next slide. This is a picture of a chunky stone here. There's several types. This is what they call a biscuit chunky stone, and it's called a biscuit chunky stone because of the shape and not because of the size. Chunky stones can be anywhere from like the size of 50-cent piece all the way to 4 to 5, 6 inches in diameter. And I'm going to pass around some of these chunky stones and let you guys check them out. And the biscuit type's one of the most common. There's kind of two main types. There's several types, but this is one of the main types. Okay, go ahead. And chunky stones are made of different things. The real super nice ones are made from quartz. And as Matt or any stone person can tell you, that quartz is like glass. It's super hard to work with, and these things were prized. They were owned by the villages. Individuals couldn't own them. The towns owned them, and they kept the chunky stones. They were like almost a sacred object. But you can see the fine detail on that. It's quartz that was found in Illinois. That's a Cahokia style, and you can tell a Cahokia style because the Cahokia style will have these indentations on the side, and the 3 or 4 different types of Cahokia depends on the thickness of this outer band. And some of these will have another indentation. Those are called double cup chunky stones. And then some will have a hole drilled through it. And a lot of people think that hole, they were trying to throw their spear through it, but there's absolutely no evidence that ever happened. I saw one writing that said that these people would tie leather straps on their spear, and that if the chunky stone fell over and the leather strap poked through the hole, that they would automatically win the game. But we don't really know how accurate that is, but that's one theory that they think. But no throwing it through the hole, no hitting the stone with the spear. We found nothing that says you try to hit the stone with the spear. It damages them, and these ancient ones are all in real good shape, so you can tell they weren't all beat up by getting hit. Okay, Kevin. Okay, there's a nice little colorful one, but some of these I'm passing around you can see are real colorful. Some of those are made from Georgia granite. We started out, Eddie Morrison, one of our Cherokee treasures, he's a stone artist too. He made us a couple to get started with. This was the first chunky stone that I ever had, and I got it over 10 years ago from a guy from the Eastern Band Cherokees, and I was buying some stuff from him. He's like, hey, I got this chunky stone, you want to buy it? I was like, well, shoot, yeah, man, it sounds pretty cool. Let's send it to me. So he sent it to me, and then I kind of got to studying it and kind of figured out the game and kind of what it was all about. So that was our first one. So Eddie made us a couple, and then Matt started making them for us. Most of these that we're passing around were made by Matt. He's great at it, but we got a guy that donated a bunch of Georgia granite, so most of those are made from granite that came from Georgia, and we're lucky to have it. We're kind of running short on Georgia granite these days, but hopefully we can get some more. He makes them out of regular granite too, but that's kind of, and you know, the granite, they probably make them out of some sandstone. You see those sometimes, but the really treasured ones are these. No, there's really not. I mean, Matt makes them. Yeah, I mean, and the Eastern Band doesn't play at all. We'll get into that, but we're really the only ones that are playing it right now, and that's every tribe there is. Of all the ones from Cahokia to Florida, we're really the only tribe that plays regular chunky at this point in time. We've helped the Creeks. We've gave them some chunky stones. When we kind of got started, the Heritage Center would have little demos of it, but they're using a little wood disc and PVC pipe. So Matt whipped us up some real chunky stones, and we donated it to the Heritage Center, and hopefully we'll get them some spears that are more authentic and realistic than a piece of plastic pipe. And they've been real grateful that we've helped them get that started back out. Okay, you can go next picture. These are some more chunky stones. You can see there's all kinds, and these are probably found in one location. There's your chunky player with all the things that are chunky. There's Cahokia style. You can see one with a hole in it. You can see how some of those are little tiny. There's some round ones, but you can see how small some of these little chunky stones are. And Matt's made me some that are just teeny tiny. And man, you can get out there and you kind of like bowling. You whip that baby and it'll take out flying. So really the size, it really depends on what you like, you know, and what rolls best. I mean, still this one's about my favorite. It seems to be a good size, and for me it works real well and rolls super good. But the quartz ones, you can't find them. You can find the ancient ones, but they're super, super expensive and super rare. There's other kinds of chunky stones. There's barrel style, there's apple style, there's 2 or 3 others, but really the Cahokia style and the biscuit style are the most common, so that's kind of what we'll stick with. Okay, I'm going to tell you how we play it today and how we kind of got started. Like I said, a little over 10 years ago, I got this Chuckey stone. Had it, kind of learned about it, like, Chuckey, yeah, that's pretty cool, man. That sounds like a lot of fun. But I really didn't do much with it, you know. I collect stuff, and it sat in my display case, and, you know, I'd get it out and look at it, and read about it, study it, try to learn how the game, because there's really not much. You just kind of have to get it from here and there to put it all together. Well, so about a year ago, I was sitting around, and I got on our Cherokee language and culture page on Facebook, and I was like, man, I'm ready to play some Chuckey. I got some stuff. Where do we play? Who plays it? And no one knew anything about it. They did. It's one of our most ancient, important sports, and very few people knew about it. They're like, well, they play it at the Heritage Center on occasion. These people play it here or there, not very much. So, hey, we were like, hey, this is cool. Let's do something. So I got a hold of my good buddy Richard Fields, and I was like, Richard, we need to do something. So we started a Facebook page, Cherokee Chuckey Players, and Richard and I started working and figuring out what kind of spears to use. We got Eddie Morrison to make us a couple more Chuckey stones, and Matt jumped in there and started cranking them out. And that's how it all kind of started. We'd start playing after the cornstalk shoots on the second Saturday every month, third Saturday every month. After the cornstalk shoot, man, everybody loves it. Everybody'd show up. We got little kids that love it. We got Jessie Jackson. She's in her mid-80s. She loves it, and she's a great player. So we've had a lot of action. We've had a lot of people show up for it. It's super cheap to get into. It's lots of fun. So it really worked out well, and people have really taken to it, and it's a lot of fun. So I encourage anyone that wants to learn it, come out and play with us. We played on the one fire field after the cornstalk shoot, and we have a good time. We don't really do any gambling. We've talked about it. We've talked about taking trinkets and then betting, kind of, but we never have really got to that point yet. We may someday just for fun, but right now we give a little prize money away, but no suicides yet, no injuries. Nobody's been poked by a spear yet, thank goodness. Absolutely, and yeah, we have extra equipment, so if anyone wants to play, come out and we'll get you set up and encourage you and show you how it's done, and you'll probably be back because it's lots of fun. Okay.
So you're saying everybody went home with their head?
Everybody has gone home. We've had no Chuckey fatalities to date, thank goodness. There's just another Chuckey stone there. Okay, go ahead. And that's one of the Cahokias with the hole in it. You can see the rim's real super thin on it, so that's not a great picture. And I have no clue what that is. Oh. Okay, that's us up at Wycliffe School. We've been doing a lot of these demos at the schools, and Charlotte and I went up there and did this one. And when we do these demos at schools and stuff, we just give everybody a spear and let them go at the same time because it takes too much time for two at a time. And these kids like it, so we go out and roll the old Chuckey stone, let them throw spears at it, and they have a real good time doing it. So that was one of the times that we went out in the past year to the local schools. Okay. That's some of our kids. That's my little boy there, Benjamin Cosby, and that's when we were playing up at Will Rogers' house during the Native American Games this year, and you can see what they chose for their T-shirt for the Native American Games. It's a Chuckey player. You see, he has his Chuckey stone. He's got his apron on. This jewelry is also supposed to be associated with Chuckey players, but I'm not sure exactly what it is, so I won't ponder. That's probably the best thing to do. There's Tanya Wapskinny playing. She has her spear with her. Okay, you can move on next. There's some of our guys. There's Ed Deerenwater and Marcus Thompson. There's some of our good players we've got. And there's Charlotte. Marcus's wife and daughter. They're all great players. Char Wolf, she is we got to play Chuckey in our Native American Games this year, so we traveled to all the community games and played. And Char was one of our winners, and Marcus's family's great, man. They're some of the best players we have, and they can do incredible things in Chunky, so we were all honored that they participate with us. But those are some of our winners from our.
Do they have river cane?
Okay.
River cane?
Yeah, what it is right now is since we got it started, we're kind of real lenient on what's used for spears. You know, we know, like I told you earlier, 8-foot hickory, smooth, but just to get it started, we've let people use whatever they want basically. So metal points, bamboo, but here pretty quick we're going to change it where we're not using anything but natural materials, bamboo, hickory, something like that, with no metal other than copper, which was available in the day, but no steel, no blades, nothing like that. Okay. And there's some more pictures. That's one Marcus's son. That's Marcus over there cheesing. Okay, you can move to the next one. There's Tana Washington. She's all proud with her big Chunky. She plays with us quite a bit. And the women really love Chunky for some reason. We have probably more women that play than men, but they really have a good time, and we really encourage it. And we're real proud of them, but she's one of our players. She's kind of played with us since the beginning, and that's the spear that she's made on her own too. Okay, and this is kind of some of the art that we've been seeing out of this. That's the same as this gorget I'm wearing tonight, and what this is Tony Chuliwa, one of our Cherokee artists. He makes these copper gorgets, and he made them before we even started playing Chunky again. And you can see it has all the stuff: broken sticks, pillbox hat, bellows aprons, Chunky stone. So very historically accurate gorgets. Okay, next one. This is another gorget. You can go ahead and make it smaller. That needs to be flipped. Another gorget Tony Chuliwa made. You can see it's chunky. It has opposing figures, but they have chunky stones and the broken sticks and everything. This is a gorget I bought from him, and he'd made it long before we started playing Chunky, but he's probably our biggest jewelry person that we have that makes chunky jewelry and things like that. Matt makes some real cool little chunky stone earrings. I don't have a picture of those, but he makes all kinds of little art things out of that. Okay, next one. This is our t-shirt, the same one I'm wearing. And we had Roy Boney make it for us. And he came and took this ancient symbol, and that's the one all of us players wear when we're playing Chunky, and just like the one I'm wearing. Yeah, he did a good job. We're very grateful. Had great support from the art community. Just everybody's really been encouraging. And like I said, this is a picture from our Native American games. It's a t-shirt, it's a chunky effigy, and very accurate one as well. These guys also wore kind of a copper band around their waist, but we're not real sure of the significance of that in the ancient one. Tana Washington, she just won a prize. This is a ceramics that she made, and she won a second place at CSAM the other day with this. And like I said, it's amazing that these people just come out and do that, and have really, it's had kind of a trickle-down effect. Not only is it a great game, but people have been able to supplement their income and work on new art that we haven't seen in hundreds of years. So it's kind of cool that all kind of came along with it. And we have guys making chunky stones and spears and you name it. I mean, it's had kind of a broad appeal to it. All right, let's see what we got. That's a car tag. You can kind of see that Mary Beth Timothy made that when she's a Cherokee artist, and I bought that from her, but she sells those and has the old Chunky right there on the front, and we like seeing it.
There's a lot of symbolism there.
Lots of symbolism, absolutely. But accurately on the Chunky, bellow apron, the jewelry, the stone, the broken sticks, and that's really the common things that you see with this. Okay, is that our, okay, that was it? Okay, let's play some of these videos and we'll watch some of these, and this is some of Marcus's family and some others playing some chunkies. You can see there goes the chunky stone. Those are Marcus's sons, and look, watch them throw those spears. And I think that might be where the chunky stone landed, but you can see those guys can throw, you can see that chunky stone. Watch them guys throw those spears. And that's a long ways, because they're not real heavy and they're like a javelin, so you really have to chunk them on a long, long distance. This is me. There comes the chunky stone. Those are his sons again. You can see. And the chunky stone, this is out of camera, but it was within just a few feet of those spears, but you can see those spears were just right together. Those guys are deadly accurate with those spears. And as far as the distances, we're going to go over the rules here in just a minute. That's some of our kids playing. Sorry the video's flipped, but you can see that's Richard rolling for them. There's Marcus, a couple of kids. They're playing them a little bit of chunky. That was up at NSU on a demonstration we did up there. You can see he's using a chunky stone with a hole in the center of it. Is that it? Okay, so the way we play it nowadays, we've kind of taken all this information that we gathered from every source that we can, and we've kind of come up with our own way of playing. And Marcus Thompson's the one that came up with our scoring system and how to do it. He's done a wonderful job at it that makes a lot of sense. And basically the way we play it is it's a stationary line with two chunky players and a roller, or even if one of the chunky players wants to roll, we'll let them. The chunky stone's rolled. They have to throw their spear before the chunky stone stops. So once whoever throws it, and usually if they say we want it a long ways, we'll roll it a long ways. If they say keep it close, or we're playing with little kids, we keep it close. And so anyway, throw it. One comes closest without hitting it gets the point. And Marcus came up, we play brackets, and each time it's 1 point. Whoever comes closest gets 1 point, and we play till 11. And then we just take from that until we get down to the final winner of who wins it. And it's a real good system. It works. You got to throw before the stone stops rolling. You can't hit the stone. We stay in a line. It's very safe. We were concerned. That's why we don't do the running and stuff like that. And it works real good. I mean, it's as good and as close as we can play, and keeping safety in mind. But it was a group effort. All of us have taken, and I can't thank Richard and Marcus enough, and Matt and Eddie Morrison, and people that's really gone out here and made this a success where all of us can enjoy this and have a good time, and it's really worked out well.
It's really good people out too.
And it's really, it's good exercise, because you walk a lot, and it's definitely work, you know. I mean, but like I said, we have 85-year-old women out there playing it. We've got 3 or 4-year-old kids playing it. If they can throw a spear, they're welcome to come out and play. We let everybody come and do it. So that works out, and like I said, all we can do is keep it coming, and hopefully we'll start seeing it in our children, where we know it's a cultural deal. When a smart man told me one time that when you start seeing these things coming through with the children, that's what our culture's all about. So, you know, I encourage all of y'all to come play, or if you have little kids, bring them out. It's real laid back. We have a great time. We laugh a lot and have a lot of fun, and play chunky, and it's a good time. And I'm really glad we got to do it. And I thank Chief Baker for letting us play it at the holiday games this year. Hopefully that will continue. and it'll become, and it's really one of the most popular sports we have, and it's just been going on a year, so it's really not been laying out there for long, and a lot of people want to play it. So like I said, we encourage you to come, and you all are very much welcome to come.
Jim,
Well,
are
no.
you open to answering some
I'm up to answering some questions. Hit me.
Let me, if anybody has a question, let me bring you the mic.
I just want to know, where did you say that they found these to start with?
But these chunky stones, they find them all over. They find them in those burial mounds and stuff, those
Yeah, now,
earthworks.
Is that like the big dirt mounds that we see?
Yeah, the ones at Cahokia, where there was a giant village of Cahokia
Yeah.
that had, I think, 30,000 inhabitants at one time. They have found them there. They find them plowing fields. They'll pop up. I mean, you see them. I follow a lot of these ancient artifact stuff, but they're literally found everywhere.
Because I know where there's a bunch of those, and let's go, what's in them?
You're correct. We don't know. And we don't want that explored looking for chunky stones, because there's plenty. If a person really wants an ancient one, even one of these crystal ones, you can find them on the market. They're legal to purchase, so we wouldn't ever encourage excavating looking for chunky stones, because
The dirt mounds I know of are on private property, so if they wanted to dig.
I think,
I guess.
well, I think now that's illegal. At one point back in the 70s, you could do that, but it's desecration of graves and stuff, so boy, I'm totally against that. So like I said, if a person wants a chunky stone, the sticks won't be there, we know that, because they've long gone. But if a person wants a chunky stone, you can buy one legally off the market. You can get a hold of Matt Gertie, he'll make you one. He'll make you whatever you want, but you don't have to desecrate a grave to look for these artifacts. They're out there. They've already been dug up years ago.
What did you say that means?
What? What, chunky? Running hard labor. That's what it's supposed to translate to. Marcus has a question there, Kevin.
Yeah, what was the purpose of them running, chasing after it anyway?
I don't really have any clue, and really that's not documented, but we know they did it, and it was an athletic game, but you know, our society now, we're all kind of a little bit lazy, and a lot of us like me is kind of a little old and lazy. So really it doesn't make sense to play it, but maybe it made it harder. Maybe those guys were just so good. I mean, it was like training for warfare, because back in that time they were still using spears. They hadn't kind of started making the bows like they did later. I mean, it was the end of the woodland, so they did have bows, but they still used spears. So we can only assume things, you know, and we can sit here and think of, well, what's the possibilities, but we need to focus more on the probabilities instead of the possibilities. But we do know it was an athletic game, and they probably chased it just to make it harder. But that's just an assumption, because it's not documented. But we do know they played from morning to night, all day long, continually running and chasing the chunky stone and throwing spears.
Could this have been related to when they hunted? They did this for accuracy, so that when they hunted?
Absolutely. I mean, I've read a little bit of literature here and there that said it was to, you know, keep your skills up, just like many of our other native games. It's all skill, and it's to help us survive and combat those that are against us and try to harm us. So you bet you wanted your people out shooting bows, throwing spears, wrestling, doing things like that would keep them in good fighting shape. So, absolutely.
You'd think that if it's hard, complex clay, that maybe they had to run 100 yards before it starts slowing down to throw the spear.
Maybe so, Kevin, but really, like I said, there's so scant of information out there that a lot of that we have to assume, but we know they played on the clay-packed surfaces, and we know that they played on the fine sand, and even the Cherokees. And one thing I forgot to bring up, the Cherokees did have something, is they would mark their spears. I told you about that, but that's one thing we know that is unique to the Cherokees. And I've seen multiple chunky stones recovered from Georgia and Tennessee, and those gorgets, they came from Kentucky, which is kind of right on the Cherokee line there. And so we know it was played by our people. There's little to no doubt that, and even these gorgets, they represent our people, because that's where they found it, in our nation.
Oh, I got a seen the Spiral Mound. They're starting to play too, starting to show people.
Is that the hoop game or is that?
Cobblestone.
Yeah, and there was a similar game. Yeah, and Spiral Mountain, no doubt, probably played Chunky because that was right in the Mississippian period when they built that mound and stuff. And
Today.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing today.
well, that's good. Well, that's awesome. And since we've started, as you know, Matt, a lot of people are playing. We're seeing people get together and play Chunky, and the schools are.
I would suggest people do research on this and kind of feed us back because
I agree.
we're the only ones out here doing this.
I agree, and hopefully someday we can go to maybe the Smithsonian, look at some Chunky stuff, and really do, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's bit and pieces, but we have enough of it to know how they played it, and we play it like they did.
Well,
But there's
really played a lot.
absolutely, but there's never enough information. We'll never have enough because it just wasn't that documented. It was ending when the Europeans came that wrote things down, and there's nothing in our oral tradition that tells about it. And Matt posted a thing today on an article from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians that they showed them some Chunky stones in the 1940s, and none of them had a clue what they were. They didn't know what they were. But because archaeology has come along and done all this research, now our generation, we know what they were, and we know the game, and we know how it's played. And not only that, we're out here playing it on a regular basis.
In some of the videos, is there like a call that's made, like when
Usually
the
we
stone is
count,
rolled and when you
subject
start?
tally. Joe, 3, 2, 1, and roll it.
What'd you say? Sorry.
We count 3, 2, 1 in Cherokee.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
No, either 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1 in Cherokee. A lot of guys don't say nothing. They'll just Richard.
Ask them if they're ready.
Yeah, Marcus will ask if they're ready. I'll count down. Richard will just go out of nowhere with it. But he's kind of our head roller. He kind of came up when we started. We took my only Chunky stone, and Richard practiced over and over, and same with Spears, and Marcus came in and helped us about that time. So it's just been a group effort, and you know, it really took all of us to get to where we are today.
It's tough throwing that stone away out there.
It is tough. But hey, isn't it amazing how well they roll over long? You can see in those videos of Marcus's sons throwing that, and it's probably 75 yards easy. I mean, I've seen those guys throw a spear probably almost 100 yards, and you're just like, whoa. Because when we started, we were all over the place. We were throwing those spears to go flipping and land everywhere and come in a big pile. But we have done enough work on it now that we're getting it together and really streamlining it into a good sport. And now everybody's getting pretty dang good. We've got women that are great, and Marcus is great. Marcus won our males Chunky at the Cherokee National Holiday this year. I told you Charlotte won the women's, but there are 2 winners, and we had some little children. I can't remember his name, but that was our winners this year, and it was really awesome, you know, to think that, hey, a year ago we just kind of came up with this, and now it's part of our native games, and it's really taken off, and it's just kind of blows you away, kind of, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason why we start using canes, because it's a lot lighter than the sticks.
True. And really you can, and that's why we, like I said, we've been real generous, but little metal on the end sure helps. You throw a lot better. Marcus has come up with some spears that throw amazing, but I think at some point we're gonna have to step back and say, we need to keep this traditional like we keep our stick ball, and use what the ancients, what our ancestors used, just so we can emulate them and it be correct for our future generations, where they know how it was played and they know what it was like, and they know what these symbols that we wear mean. Because, you know, pictures tell a lot of stories. Thank goodness there was enough pictures out there that we could kind of learn from, and that our ancestors left us that many didn't know about till today. So it's kind of amazing that they left us these things where we can learn and we can be more like them and do the things that they did each day.
You was talking about the Chunky game being older than stickball.
Correct.
I was seeing writing in 1540s where they know stickball being played.
Well, and like I said, there isn't very much information that we know. Stickball remained once Chuckey ended. And no one can say, well, on this day, because like I said, in the 1600s, it's documented that some of the tribes were still playing Chuckey, and we know they were playing stickball at that point in time. And I did some reading on it that said that stickball replaced it. So I don't know if that meant that Chuckey stopped or that stickball eventually just became more popular and took over the sport, and that's what everyone played. Like I said, that's just a guess, but you're right, they're both ancient sports, but you know, we know that Chuckey's at least over 1,000 years old because, and it came from Cahokia, and it came from a similar game they played before Chuckey. But so we know about 1,000 years ago, right at the first of the Mississippian late woodland period, is kind of when Chuckey began, as far as scientific research lets us know. And I know that stickball's super old too, so we don't know. And like I showed you those Chuckey yards, that some they think were combination Chuckey and stickball because.
One was that you showed it.
Yeah, so that's what I say. So they could have been playing them at the same time and just got tired of all their people losing their money and killing themselves and getting their heads cut off, that they became a more gentle game, even as rough as stickball is, that it was kind of a little less violent, maybe you could say. And so maybe it made sense to get away from it in that point in time. But really the important thing is the game is fun, and we can use our heads to keep it fun and not let it get carried away and violent. We just go out and have a good time and have fun and play an ancient game.
Yeah, it's just something, my family all plays.
Yeah, Marcus, everyone has family and they are super great players, and we're really happy to have them on board. And Charlo's super good, and Richard's
She's
good.
okay.
Yeah.
Can we ask Matt about making the chunky stones?
You want to come up front here and talk
Yeah, would
about
you-
it? Yeah, no, come on up, Matt, and tell them how you make these chunky stones. They can't see on the camera. Come up, man. Come on up here and tell us. No, we need you up here where these people can see you. Yeah, these people can see you on camera. We can't do it just you talking in the background there. And the chunky stones.
Here's one I just made right here. What I'm using today is just a handheld grinder and a expertise. As you got to really use your measurements right to get your roll just right, because they're all different. See, they're bigger and they're smaller, so you got to make sure your what do you call it, concave right. So, and towards the middle here, I'm just making sure I take as much this out right here as I do with this. There's really no explanation of what I'm doing. It's just me and this stone that I'm feeling right here. I can't explain to you how deep I'm going here. It's just what I know, what I'm just years of working with these things. You can see how many I've done. So it's kind of gotten second, just part of me as right now. But as far as my first one to like this right here, I think I've pretty much gotten to where I can make any one of them that I've seen. But it just amazes me how they were able to do this without the stone tools and the handheld grinders.
How do you suppose they did that, Matt?
I was hearing from archaeologists that they were chipping them. What you were explaining about quartz.
And
That's the only
polish.
thing I could think about when you do quartz was chipping it.
Yeah.
Just popping it like that. Yeah, and smoothing it out. Yeah. Well, I had to use sandpaper. So like back then they used shark skin. They used sandstone. And theirs are beautiful too. And they got that finish. And I don't even know how they did that, because you can still see marks on mine. But I guess I'm just, I just want to get this out here. I just thought I'd give it a shot. I'm thankful. I've been making these maybe 10 years before I spoke with Jim, and he asked me if I made one, and I've made several of them before, and I just didn't know anybody who was playing this game. So he mentioned it, and I said, yeah. As a matter of fact, I got one we can
Yeah.
use. You know. So
Yeah.
ever since you guys been playing, it's been helping me to develop my skills on these stones. So as I couldn't teach, I'd have to show you. You'd have to come to my studio, and I'd have to show you, the measurements on different styles, different. You know, they're bigger. I made some this big before, so
Yeah.
and thick. Yeah. It's just handheld grinder, cement tools, masonry tools is what I use.
And
Especially grinder. But see, I started out with soapstone. I started carving just little real soft stones, and then I worked my way up to granite, and then to harder stones than that. Which this is pretty much the hardest you can get, but besides quartz.
Is that your main source, the book?
No, I just got this book the other day. I've just. Oh, do you really? Yeah, I was just wanting to show some people.
yeah, the sun circles
Yeah, that sun circles. Yeah.
and human hands.
Just doing research, I'm able to find out just different things that I'm adding. You know,
Right.
like
And a lot of these gorgets and stuff are in that sun
Yeah.
circles and human hands book and chunky stones and everything. So we know it's real accurate on the information. But boy, I can't thank Matt enough for helping us. Since he's been helping us, we've been able to give other tribes chunky stones so they can get started, and we just give it to them. We've given them to the creek. We've talked to the Eastern band trying to get them playing. I mean, it'd be kind of nice for us to travel and play these other tribes and really go. And they've really taken an interest. I talked to a creek guy I know the other day that I gave the chunky stones to, and he said they were just getting ready to start kicking it off pretty good and getting serious about it. So we hope that
get
happens
everybody
pretty quick.
involved.
You bet.
Matt, how do you spell your last name?
Girty.
Girty. What though?
Would maybe marble be something, or like maybe the marble techniques, how they grinded down the marble stones?
That's
Would that
probably how
maybe
they might have did
a
that. Yeah.
technique?
I was looking at them too, and this is just theory. This is just my opinion. I was thinking maybe nutcrackers. Over time, had the women make some. I really don't know. I don't know. I came to
Knuchy
this-
pounder.
Yeah, Nutchy pounder. Yeah, really, I just came to this as an artist. I see things as an artist, and I approach this that way. And unfortunately, it came out right. I'm waiting
It
on
did.
somebody to come up and say, "Hey, you're doing this all wrong."
No,
But-
they're works of art,
But
each one.
hopefully they are.
And they're like a snowflake. Each one's different. None of them.
Oh yeah,
None of them
they
are the
are
same.
different. Yeah, I can see a big difference in them.
Feel good to hold them.
They do.
Yeah.
A long time ago, they used to get that indention in it. They would use sand and a rag, and they would rub it forever.
Yeah.
And then after they got it the depth they wanted to make it real smooth, they would use just a rag, and they would just polish and polish forever.
We know it had to be a lot of work doing it by hand.
Just one
There's-
town had one stone each.
Yeah.
And it took and they had the time to make these things. So,
And they were
you know, I think
treasured
it worked.
possessions maybe because they were so hard to make.
Yeah, for
But
one-
individuals didn't own them. It was owned by the towns.
Maybe one per town.
Yeah. And maybe had a guy like Matt's grandpa up there
Yeah.
grinding them
I
out
like to
for
think
us.
that, yeah.
Or however many stones they
There's
had.
a comment back here.
Yes.
Hi, how long did it take you to make that?
This one, okay, I get that question all the time. It'll probably take from start to finish, probably about 4 hours. And that's from getting just a block, a square
4
block.
hours.
And I'm having to make my circles. It just depends on how big they are. Because if I get bigger ones, this is probably about the biggest one. This one will probably take about 4 hours. It's just because they're so big, and I'm always turning. I'm always turning in my hand, making sure my dip's right, and I'm hitting that middle circle. So there's a lot of factors going into this. So I mean, there's a lot of factors going into how quick I can make one of these. It being the kids are playing and they're not in my way, or if things are going right, I can probably knock one out about 4.
And luckily we were able to meet Mr. Bean from down there in Georgia.
Yeah.
And he sent us boxes
Yeah.
of these blanks to make these chunky stones out of. And we can't thank him enough
Yeah.
for helping us, because it really not only made a nice thing, but it's something from the homeland. These are the same
Yeah, that's the ones
stones
that they
that our
found.
ancestors would have made theirs from.
If it took you 4 hours to make one with modern tools, how long you think it took them to make one?
That's what I was thinking. Well, oh man, probably. I know for a pipe, it maybe took them 6 months to carve a pipe. So I would imagine, and that's carved out of steatite, and that's a lot softer than this stuff. So I don't know. I'd imagine longer than that. But of course, they had the time. They could kick back and do work on this stuff. They didn't have to.
Why we went plowed the field.
That's it. They didn't have to. Yeah.
And that's another thing. During
Specialty.
during the Mississippian period, it was more of an agriculture society, so they had a lot of spare time to play games and make stones and play chunky and stuff. They weren't out having to hunt game and things like their ancestors did. They had a lot of free time.
Do you think there's ever a time where they were getting ready to play the game and they were looking around and go, honey, what did I do with the chunky stone?
I would say there's probably one guy over them in the town, and if they couldn't find him, they'd have to answer. They'd probably be the guy they're holding his head in that picture I was telling you about. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of these games started out as ritual, like war and stuff. That's just my opinion from what I've been reading and studying. But like I said, everybody here needs to do research, help us research, because we're the only ones throwing into this bucket here and pulling out what we think's right, you know. So it's going to take an effort for everybody.
I've wondered about the ceremonial aspect too to the game. I'm sure, like so many things, and especially spirituality, that's even harder to find information on that. But I just think of, anytime our people came together, there was, some sort of spiritual aspect and something. So.
And you can imagine if they're wearing necklaces, shell gorgets with these symbols and things, it had to be some kind of religious. I mean, there's really no evidence that says it was, but anyone that knows anything about ancient cultures knows that something that important probably had some religious or ceremonial significance to it.
Sure. Wow. Well, we're right at probably 7 o'clock or so. So I guess are there any more questions before we wrap up, or do you want to give some final comments?
Please come out and play with us. One Fire Field, third Saturday after the cornstalk shoot. And Wado Nagada. Bill, do you have a question?
Oh.
We'll be playing this Saturday because we have the United Nations on the third Saturday.
Okay, well, just on third Saturday each month after the cornstalk shoot, One Fire Field. You don't have to have any equipment. You don't have to have any skill. None of us did when we started. I don't really even play. I just kind of help everybody and help oversee everything. So you're not too bad to play or you're not too good to play. It's easy. You don't have to do much. Not too old to play, I promise you that, or too young. Okay, Wado Nagada.